In 2017, Sean Parker, the founding president of Facebook, stood in front of a live audience and said something that should have changed everything. He said, and these are his exact words, "God only knows what it is doing to our children's brains." He was not speaking as a critic. He was not speaking as an outsider. He was speaking as the man who helped build it. He went on to describe, calmly, almost clinically, how Facebook was designed from the very beginning to exploit, his word, exploit, what he called a vulnerability in human psychology. A vulnerability, not a preference, not a habit, a vulnerability. As fundamental and as involuntary as flinching when something is thrown at your face. This video is about that vulnerability, and the 4 engineering systems built on top of it that are running inside your phone right now. In 1930, a psychologist named Burris Frederick Skinner, known professionally as B.F. Skinner, placed a rat inside a controlled chamber. Inside the chamber was a lever. When the rat pressed the lever, it received a food pellet. Skinner then changed the rules. The lever no longer dispensed food every time. Instead, it dispensed food on what he called a variable ratio schedule, meaning the rat never knew which press would deliver the reward. It could be the 3rd press or the 30th. The result was extraordinary. The rat pressed the lever compulsively, far more than it ever did when the reward was predictable. It could not stop, even when it was no longer hungry. The unpredictability had hijacked the animal's reward circuitry entirely.
That was 1930. Nearly a century later, the same mechanism lives inside every smartphone on Earth. When you pull down to refresh your social media feed, you are pulling Skinner's lever. You do not know what will appear. It might be a message from someone you care about. It might be nothing. It might be a photograph that makes you feel inadequate, or a notification that floods your body with warmth. That unpredictability is not a bug. It is the architecture. Your brain's ventral tegmental area, a small cluster of neurons deep in the midbrain, releases dopamine, not when you receive the reward, but when you anticipate it. The pull to refresh gesture, that downward swipe, is neurochemically identical to pulling the arm of a slot machine. The same pathway, the same transmitter, the same compulsion. And it was designed by teams of engineers who understood this research to function exactly this way. Open your phone right now and look at your home screen. Look carefully at the notification badges, those small, bright, circular indicators sitting on top of your application icons. They are red. Not blue, not green, not a neutral gray. Red. Every single one. Across virtually every major platform. Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, YouTube, WhatsApp uses the same color. And that is not a coincidence. It is not a stylistic preference. It is an evolutionary weapon. For approximately 300,000 years, the human visual system has been calibrated by natural selection to treat the color red as an emergency signal. Red is the color of blood. Red is the color of fire. Red is the color that, across nearly every mammalian species, triggers an involuntary threat detection response in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. When a red notification appears on your screen, your amygdala does not evaluate it rationally. It does not pause to consider whether the notification is meaningful. It fires, reflexively, releasing a cascade of cortisol, the same neurochemical your ancestors produced when they heard a predator moving through the underbrush. Your heart rate increases, imperceptibly. Your pupils dilate, fractionally. Your finger moves toward the icon, not because you chose to, but because 300 millennia of survival programming commanded you to address the red signal immediately. And here is what makes this particularly insidious. Tristan Harris, a former design ethicist at Google, has publicly stated that technology companies test notification badge colors extensively. They know from controlled internal experiments that switching the badge color from red to gray reduces application engagement by as much as 40%. They measured it, they documented it, and they chose deliberately to keep it red. You are not checking your phone because you want to. You are checking it because a 300,000-year-old alarm system built to keep you alive on the savannah is being triggered by a color selected in a corporate design meeting specifically because it is impossible for your brain to ignore. In 2006, a 22-year-old interface designer named Ozzer Raskin, the son of Jeff Raskin, who created the original Macintosh project at Apple, invented something that would quietly reshape human behavior on a planetary scale. He invented infinite scroll. Before infinite scroll, every web page had a bottom. You would read, you would reach the end of the content, and the page would stop. That endpoint, that visible floor, was a natural stopping cue. It was the digital equivalent of reaching the last page of a chapter. Your brain registered it, processed the pause, and decided whether to continue or close the tab. Raskin eliminated the floor.
He created a feed that regenerates itself, endlessly, without any visible terminus. You scroll, and new content materializes. You scroll further, and more appears. There is no bottom. There is no chapter break. There is no cue anywhere in the interface that suggests you have consumed enough. And this is not a theoretical problem. In 2005, researchers at Cornell University conducted what is now known as the bottomless soup bowl experiment. They gave participants bowls of soup. Some bowls were normal. Others were secretly connected to a hidden tube beneath the table that continuously refilled the bowl without the participants' knowledge. The result was staggering. Participants with the bottomless bowls consumed 73% more soup than those with normal bowls. And when asked, they did not believe they had eaten more. They did not feel more full. The visual cue of an empty bowl, the stopping signal, had been removed. And without it, the brain simply did not stop. That is infinite scroll. Your feed is the bottomless bowl, and your brain is waiting for a bottom that will never come. Ozzer Raskin himself has since stated publicly that he estimates infinite scroll causes the average user to spend approximately 200,000 additional hours on their devices across a collective human lifetime. He has called it one of his deepest professional regrets. Every time you post a photograph and someone presses the heart icon, a small pulse of dopamine is released in your brain's nucleus accumbens, the same region activated by nicotine, cocaine, and gambling wins. That is not a metaphor. That is fMRI data, published in peer-reviewed neuroscience journals, demonstrating that social media validation activates precisely the same neural reward pathway as chemical substances of abuse. But the mechanism does not end at a single pulse. It loops. You post, you receive a like, your nucleus accumbens fires, you feel a momentary surge of social validation, and then it fades. The dopamine dissipates, the warmth recedes, and in its absence, a quiet, almost imperceptible deficit forms. Not pain, but an absence of pleasure that the brain registers as a signal to seek the stimulus again. So you post again, you check the metrics again, you refresh. Again. This is what behavioral psychologists call a compulsion loop, and it is the foundational architecture of every major social media platform operating today. It is not designed to satisfy you. It is designed to leave you perpetually almost satisfied, so that you return and return and return. And the metrics are not incidental. They are central. The number of likes, the number of views, the number of shares. These are not features. They are psychological instruments, precision-calibrated readouts that transform your social experience into a quantifiable score. Every interaction is numbered. Every post becomes a performance to be measured, evaluated, and compared. Sean Parker, in that same 2017 interview, described it with remarkable precision. He said that the architects of these platforms understood, consciously and deliberately, that they needed to give users, and again, these are his words, a little dopamine hit every once in a while, because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post. He said, it is a social validation feedback loop, and it is exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with,
because you are exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. He was not warning us from the outside. He was confessing from the inside.
4 systems, 4 layers of behavioral architecture, each one refined across billions of users, each one invisible to the person holding the device. A slot machine, rebuilt as a pull-to-refresh gesture, hijacking the same variable reward circuitry that B.F. Skinner documented nearly a century ago. A color, selected not for aesthetics but for evolutionary neuroscience, weaponizing 300,000 years of threat detection programming to ensure you never ignore a notification. An infinite feed, engineered to remove every natural stopping cue your brain depends on, turning your browsing experience into a bottomless bowl you can never finish. And a feedback loop, designed by people who openly describe their own work as exploiting human psychological vulnerabilities, converting your social life into a dopamine metric that keeps you reaching for the lever one more time. This is not a phone. This is a behavioral architecture, and it was built by 200 of the most intelligent engineers on Earth, whose singular professional mandate is to ensure you never put it down. But now, you see the wiring, and that changes everything. This is mind-rigged. See the system, break the loop. Subscribe, because the next video decodes the 5 manipulation triggers hidden in every advertisement you have ever seen. And once you see them, you will never unsee them.